What if your company could lose a labor lawsuit, even when you're completely right? Not because of what happened, but because of how it was handled. Today, I want to talk about a small procedural detail that many employers overlook, yet it can have serious financial and legal consequences. I'm referring to the 8-day rule under Article 62 of the Moroccan Labor Code. In many of the cases we've handled, the company was entirely right on the facts. The employee had clearly committed gross misconduct, yet it still ended up being ordered by the court to pay termination compensation, notice pay, and damages, simply because the procedure wasn't followed properly. Let's begin with what the law actually says. Article 62 provides that before terminating an employee, the employer must allow them to be heard in the presence of an employee representative or union delegate of their choice within 8 days from the date the alleged misconduct was identified. This short article carries enormous weight. Two key principles emerge. The 8-day countdown starts on the day the misconduct is discovered, not when management decides to act. If the hearing does not take place within that period, the dismissal procedure is considered invalid, even if the misconduct is proven beyond doubt. In employment law, procedural fairness is as important as substantive fairness. And that's exactly where many companies lose their cases, not because of what the employee did, but because of how the employer responded. Let's look at a few real-life cases that show how this rule plays out in practice. In one case, a company summoned an employee 10 days after discovering a serious act of insubordination. The misconduct was undeniable. Yet the court ruled the dismissal unlawful because the hearing had been scheduled outside the legal time frame. In another case, the company summoned and heard the employee on the same day, leaving no opportunity to prepare or to bring representation. The dismissal was overturned for breaching the employee's right to be heard. In a third case, the employee refused to attend the hearing. The employer assumed that refusal was sufficient to proceed with termination. It wasn't. The court held that the company should have notified the labor inspector of the refusal, not for supervision, but as evidence that the procedure had been properly completed. And in one particularly interesting case, the employee was on certified sick leave during the 8-day period. The court clarified that the countdown is suspended while the employment contract is paused due to illness. Because the employer moved too early, the entire process was declared void. Each example shows how easily a procedural misstep can turn a legitimate disciplinary measure into an unlawful dismissal. All these cases share one common theme. The employer was right on the substance, but wrong on the procedure. And in employment litigation, procedure always wins. A delay of a few days, an incorrectly dated letter, or a missing notice to the labor authorities, and the dismissal becomes procedurally unfair, even if the misconduct is real. To protect your company, follow these steps carefully. Document the misconduct in writing, dated and signed. Invite the employee to a disciplinary hearing within 8 days of discovering the incident. Allow the employee to be accompanied by an elected representative or union delegate. Record the hearing in a written statement signed by both parties. If the employee refuses to attend, immediately notify the labor inspector to demonstrate compliance. These 5 actions are your safeguard against costly procedural errors. In employment disputes, the truth of the facts is never enough. What protects the employer in court is procedural compliance. Most companies that lose their cases do so not because they were wrong, but because they acted too late or too fast. The 8-day rule may appear to be a minor formality, but in reality, it's the line between a valid dismissal and an expensive judgment. For every HR manager or business owner, remember this. Discipline without procedure is a defeat waiting to happen. Respect the rule, respect the timeline, protect your company,